First-time caller line, you're on there with Don Zaidle. Hi.
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing tonight?
All right.
How's your back, Art?
Well, it's all right.
Okay.
At the moment.
Hey, we're picking you up here on Oklahoma City's Talk Radio, 9:30 a.m. WKY.
Now, that is the way you do a promo. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Say, Don, it's a pleasure to hear a guy of your caliber on radio. Say, I had something I needed to let you in on. Back in when I was a teenager, when I was living with my dad, we were briefly over in the country of Iran between 1974 and 77. Mm-hmm. During my brief stay there, during that time frame, I became familiar with what the local people over the Iranians called their desert wild dogs. Mm-hmm. And these were canines that were there as a result of foreigners who would briefly live in their country, and they would bring their dogs with them. Sometimes these dogs would run off into the desert. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the Iranians said that these dogs became more social. And something that I actually witnessed that I'm telling you, gentlemen, it scared the hell out of me, and I'll never look at a dog the same again, was back in 1975, we lived in a 3-story apartment complex over there. And roughly about 800 yards from us, there was a 10-acre compound, which was kind of like a summer camp for privileged people of the area. They would send their kids off to, and it was like maybe a 2-month time frame that they would be there. And this compound was walled in by a brick wall that was roughly 3 feet thick and about 12 feet tall. And they had street lamps all around this area. And one night I heard a lot of barking, and it woke me up, and I looked out the balcony, and I actually counted roughly 36 wild dogs, and they were actually attempting a siege on this compound. And one thing that I noticed is that there were a lot of the bigger dogs were the ones that would try to jump on the gates, and the camp manager inside, he had roughly about 20 adult males, and they weren't allowed to use firearms within the compound out of fear of ricocheting off the walls and maybe hitting one of the kids. Mm-hmm. And so they were reduced to using weapons like spears and basically big sticks and rocks. And it lasted for about, I'd say about an hour and a half until the dogs finally just gave up and ran off.
You're talking about a whole assault?
Yes, sir. And believe me, when I first saw it, I ran into my dad's room, and I said, Dad, you got to get up. You've got to see this. And what he did is he looked out and he said, oh, my God. He said, get on the roof, get on the roof. And we both ran up there on the roof, and we looked down, and you could get a clear view from the street lamps that were up at night because this siege was like about 2:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And the thing that my dad noticed, he says, they are attempting a siege. He says they got 2 iron gates, and the front iron gate, which was the main one, was only 8 feet tall. And we noticed 4 dogs they looked like, they were about the size of Great Danes, but most of them were like short-haired dogs. And these 4 dogs that were at the main gate would attempt to jump and leap up and get their hooves hooked on to the gate. And you could hear the scratching of their back paws if they were trying to get up there. It was like
that is freaky.
But something that from that experience, I needed to ask Dawn, hypothetically speaking, what conditions do you think in this country would have to be met before a situation like this that happened, that I witnessed in Iran, would happen here, where we would see unwanted dogs going out into remote areas, forming packs, a social life,
and going after people?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have sad news for you. That's happening right now.
Wow.
That is happening right now. I have no record, nor have I observed an incident of the magnitude that you have described. But in the book, I described one particular case of a boy who was, it seemed like he was about 11, 12 years old, something like that, and he was fishing in a creek at some relative's farm that they were visiting. And a pack of, I think, consisting of 5 feral dogs attacked him. And he, in a maneuver that he had learned in a hunter safety course that he had taken the year prior, knew he couldn't fight, he knew he couldn't run, so he just rolled up in a fetal position, wrapped his arms around his head and neck, and pulled his knees up to protect his stomach and chest, and just kind of toughed it out and started screaming for help. Fortunately, someone from the house heard it, come running down with a gun, shot a couple of the dogs, ran the others off, and he survived with medical treatment. But that scenario has played out time and time again, not only in rural settings as this one was, but even in urban settings.
All right, well, that brings me back to his question, and really it was a good one. Can you imagine conditions? I mean, frequently we talk of scenarios, Mad Max-like scenarios, where society deteriorates, something goes tragically wrong. There's a Mad Max kind of thing going on. Animals are left on their own. Animals that were fed by humans suddenly aren't. They get together. Would there be any conditions under which you would imagine that a mass attack like that could occur on...
Certainly. A large-scale natural disaster, such as earthquake, for example.
Yeah, there you go.
Whatever. Civil insurrection, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. I can't not ask you about this. It may be myth, but for some time now, and believe me, you will not get laughs in Mexico when you talk about this. There is some creature called the Chupacabra, which translates apparently to goat sucker. And I'll tell you something. I've got Linda Moulton Howe, who's a very careful investigator, who's made a lot of trips to Puerto Rico and Central and South America and Mexico, and there have been hundreds of animals that have been killed by this possibly mythical creature. Anyway, their bodies have been found without blood in them. Now, I obviously you said Chupacabra, so you're familiar with the myth or the reality or whatever it is. Any comments?
I suspect a combination of things are at work there. One, I do believe that some of the victims may have, in fact, fallen under the fangs and claws of some form of natural predator. Mm-hmm. Whether it be, down in Mexico, you have jaguars that come up from Central America. They're native to Mexico. You have jaguars, which they're not real prolific man killers, although they're certainly capable. You also have the puma or cougar down in that region, which could be responsible in some cases. There's even the Mexican black bear, which could be responsible in some cases. Feral dogs, any number of predators that could be responsible for some of them. But what I think may be happening in many of these cases, especially the ones where there's no obvious trauma, physical trauma to the body other than just the loss of the blood.
Neck bites.
What I think you're seeing there is the very same thing that you see very, very frequently in Africa, and it is a occult ritual slaying that is carried out either as a means of extortion or to, at least in the mind of the practitioner, to impart some kind of power to themselves. Do you remember the case a few years ago in Matamoros, Mexico, where these college students that would go over across the border, they were being lured away with promises of sex, and then they were being killed in ritual slayings by these shamans that worked for these drug lords. And the purpose of this was to bring protection on these drug lords from the police and what have you. I think that what you may be seeing is something like that. It's black magic, so to speak. The blood draining is being carried out by human actors for an occult purpose. But I think that the legend of the Chupacabra may be born from a combination of the two things. You've got, some wild predator victims here.
Sure.
And then you've also got some human victims, and it all kind of melds together to create the Chupacabra legend.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Don Zaidle. Hi.
Good morning, Art. Good morning, Don.
Morning. Where are you, sir?
I'm calling from Como country up in Seattle.
All right.
I'd just like to relate a quick story that I experienced down in San Francisco. I was in Golden Gate Park one day at the Arboretum, which is a nice place with flowers and everything, nice springtime. And there was a lady with about a 3-year-old by the pond. Okay, a couple of geese there. And granted, they're wings were clipped and everything, but she says to her little son, well, go up and pet the nice bird. Well, this bird just lowered its head and charged at this person, at this little kid. Luckily, it didn't bite the kid in the face, bit him in the rear end. Now, it's just basically, that Bambi factor where, the people think that, they see this thing on TV or whatever, and they're wild. Granted, it was in an urban area, but people just do not realize that, animals are animals.
Exactly. That is my basic point. Animals are animals.
Now, we have a civilization. If our civilization broke down, would the animal civilization break down at the same time?
No, not at all. In fact, I think you'd probably see a proliferation in the sense that if our civilization broke down, the care that is being given to domestic animals would cease. Therefore, these domestic animals would be left to their own devices. They would therefore revert to their instinctual behaviors. And, we'd have animals running all over the place, eating everything in sight, eating each other, eating us.
So you wouldn't say that their civilization broke down, ours did, and because we're not giving them what they need anymore, they would take what they need.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple as that.
Yeah, it's simple survival.